And welcome back to the Property Forum. I'm joined by Phil Gardner and Luke Masters, and we're discussing HMOs and property evictions. So let's dive straight into another question from the forum. Omar from Cardiff has asked, is it better as a new investor for me to buy a ready-made HMO, or shall I do it myself from scratch, presumably, and build it himself?
That's a very interesting question, because there are clearly benefits on both sides. You've got, in one sense, perhaps if you don't have the time to manage a build, then a ready-made one may be your answer.
Hands-off route.
Although potentially at that point you're taking on the last 10% of the job, which is probably at that point the least profitable portion of the job. Taking it on yourself is probably going to be a financially better option for you, but obviously you must be able to have the time to do so. And Definitely. Without the time to do so, you're not going to be able to manage the build effectively, leading to potentially spiralling costs, errors, etc. And it just really does depend on whether you're looking for something that's done and you don't need to put any time into it, or whether you've got the time and you want to take on the challenge. You'll learn a lot from doing it yourself, though.
Yeah, don't try and do it yourself if you haven't got the time, basically, because if you embark on that journey and make a mess of it, it's going to be a pretty costly experiment, isn't it?
Yes, it'd be very costly and empty for a long period of time, I'd imagine, as well.
And you definitely make more money from a capital growth point of view by developing it yourself, though.
Absolutely.
It's important to note, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. By the end of the project, even, you should see a marked difference in evaluation.
Definitely. Adding value into any kind of property deal is a good way to run your business, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I also think you have to, if you're new to it, then you've got to seek the right advice from the right people. Don't try and do it yourself if you've never done it before.
No, maybe the first couple buying something ready-made is the perfect way to get onto the ladder and to
make sure you've got the right support behind you, and you know, you can make some good money.
Yeah, okay, no, really good advice there, guys. Okay, so this is a question for the panel. From Ahmed from Southampton. What is the best type of tenant market to aim for? Some examples he's given are young professionals, students, etc. And how do you vet a good tenant?
Again, it comes back to choosing your demographic. If your demographic is students, then you need to have property that applies for students, and young professionals. But you're going to need to vet them accordingly. You're going to expect a higher turnover from students, more than likely. As they move around term to term. I mean, yearly they're probably going to move property. You might expect a professional to stay slightly longer. I mean, there's plenty of tenants that I know that have moved into rooms and house shares and have been there for years. Obviously, students, that's going to be an unlikely scenario for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Taking into account all of the circumstances of each tenant as well. So, from a young professional perspective, you know, how long have they been in their job? Just simple questions like that can mean the difference between a headache and not a headache. How often do they move about? These sorts of things. Because just asking those questions, if you've got people that are only in a property 3, 4, 5 or 6 months, then you've got to ask yourself why.
Yeah, and it will be leaving me in a few months as well, I guess.
It can even come back to the guarantor situation, which we spoke about earlier.
Exactly.
Just putting that security in there is regardless of whether it is a student or a young professional, that is going to give you more security irrespective of your choice.
Yeah, definitely. I guess going back to the overall location of the investment, if you're in a university town, you might be swayed to do more of a student HMO model or something, whereas if you live in a sort of good, vibrant town, such as Reading's a good area, Thames Valley, where we actually operate a little bit, you've got a mix of both. You've got some student market there, but you've got lots of young professionals. So I like to say don't go too far from home, especially when you're starting out, because you know knowing your target market and your target demographic is really key to making the right investments, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Right, I've got a question here for Luke from Veronica from Cyprus. So having never invested in an HMO property before, what are the biggest mistakes and pitfalls investors usually make with this type of investment?
I would say hiring some help or knowing somebody who has experience that you know, or doing a lot of reading is probably the most crucial thing to do first.
Educate yourself.
You need to educate yourself, because there are stipulations and laws that you must abide by, otherwise you get yourself in a very uncomfortable situation, not potentially any fault of your own, but just through inexperience and lack of knowledge. And you need to educate yourself in the process in its entirety before even starting the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on it there, but getting key relationships in place with people that've
As
got that
early as
knowledge already.
possible.
Yeah, you don't have to make all of the mistakes. You know, you can go online, for example, onto the forum and talk to like-minded investors to learn from them, learn from their mistakes. You know, we've got a section of, you know, landlords in distress on the forum there, which is great for people that have made those mistakes. You can read that kind of stuff and go, oh crikey, you know, I didn't think of that one. I'm going to make sure I put that clause into my contract or develop my property in a slightly different way to avoid that mistake that someone else has made.
I think as well that people, whether you're out of the country or in the country, they need to be very mindful of staying on top of these things. When people start not paying the rent,
and we're talking from Cyprus,
get onto it exactly.
Cyprus,
you know, you need to get onto it straight away. And I always say to people, if somebody owed you £10, you wouldn't just leave it and leave it. You want that £10 back. And yet for some reason, people with property, when they're owed rent, they think, well, it's okay, it'll get sorted, and it doesn't. You need to make sure you're on top of these things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Good. Okay, we've got a question for Phil here from Ricky from Shinfield. How long is a typical eviction process using the High Court once the landlord has a county court judgment in hand? So if you could just tell us a little bit more about that process and what's involved.
Sure. So once you've got the county court possession order, which can take up to 13 weeks through the county court system, and providing you've got the paperwork correct, you can ask to transfer it up to the High Court. And then with our company, High Court Solutions, we have an agent that will attend the High Court to help get that process through. And once we're given the eviction paperwork, we can be on site usually within 10 days. One of the issues that's been coming around because of the pressures on the court system and the fact county courts are being closed and the High Court is becoming inundated, they are tending to say that the county courts are well placed to handle these things. And unfortunately, it's a very lengthy process if it's left with the county court. So our advice is you need to make sure you have all of the paperwork correct, which we can assist with in making sure that you have a hardship statement from the landlord and a statement of the impact it's having on their finances, along with the rent arrears that might be due on a Section 8, for example. And then at the time that you put it into the county court, you apply also to have the permission to transfer it straight up to the High Court.
So you've set the path already.
So you've set the bar.
The worst case scenario.
Exactly right. And that can help to shorten the process, and we're finding that to be quite successful.
Because I think the county court is overwhelmed with work. They have
exactly right.
You know, their enforcement actually of a judgment is pretty poor. Is it? Is that fair to say?
It is, and as we've touched on, because the pressure on the court system and the county courts being closed all over the country, the ones that are left are overwhelmed with work. And what they're then doing is they'll give you the possession order. It goes out to a local bailiff. Those bailiffs have varying degrees of success, but it can take
minimal powers.
Exactly, the powers are less for the county court bailiffs as well. So, you know, again, it goes back to the reoccurring thing that we're talking about here: making sure all of your paperwork is correct, engaging with the right professionals early on, and making sure that the process can be as short as possible.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining me both today on the show. That's Phil Gardner from High Court Solutions and Luke Masters from Red Brick Property Services.
Thanks for watching the Property Forum Chat Show, the place to talk property on TV. And don't forget, we're also online 24/7 at propertyforum.com. I look forward to chatting to you on the forum.